What's up, guys? Welcome to the Tranquil Living Uruguay podcast. I'm Vanessa, your host. If you're curious about what the weather in Uruguay is actually like, then this episode I am breaking down the real climate experience of living in Uruguay as an expat. So let's get into it. When you think about South America, most people automatically think it's warm all year round, especially since there are no mountains or high elevation in Uruguay. Well, reality check, it's not warm all year round. And that's actually in a good way for me. Growing up in and spending lots of summers and significant time in Latin America, one thing I can say is that Uruguay's weather is not tropical. I moved here and was pleasantly surprised to know that, the 8 months out of the year, I wouldn't be baking in humid, hot weather or drenched in torrential afternoon rainstorms. I really think year round offers a pretty good mix of weather with no long term extremes on either end of the spectrum. And before we decided on Uruguay, personally, weather in general is a huge factor for us. Growing up in Louisiana, I know hot, humid weather very well with yearly hurricane threats. At 17, I experienced Katrina, which was awful. In my early 20s, I spent 5 years living in DC, and that was my first time dealing with snowy winters. And I knew snow was like to be living in a place where it snows is not for me. I like visiting it. I love seeing the mountains and experiencing snow in the mountains, but not for um, real life. In California, where we last lived, I did experience a couple of small earthquakes, but actually nothing beats the one that I felt in Washington, D.C. back in 2011. It was a weird one, a shocking one that kind of came out of the blue, being on the East Coast. And then the other time I experienced like earthquakes, they call them temblores, is what they call them in Panama. I've experienced quite a few of those, and they were, they're pretty significant. I mean, we're definitely like shook the house and things fell off the house. So, so luckily, the wonderful part about Uruguay is that there are no hurricanes, virtually no tornadoes. Although I have heard of a couple happening in the interior of the country. No earthquakes, no snow. So basically, no extreme weather on either side of the spectrum. But from time to time, there is wind, and winds like you probably have never experienced before. It usually lasts a day or two and then goes away. When I lived in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, for 6 months before Uruguay, I did experience this type of extreme wind. It was a warm wind because we were there summer and then going into fall and winter. And I'll never forget this really weird, like warmed, extreme wind that I was told is desert wind coming from Africa up to Spain. So that was my first time I had experienced wind like that because I'd never been to like if I'm comparing to the US, I've never been to Chicago. I think they call it the Windy City. So I can't compare on personal experience, but I can kind of compare this to the Spain experience, except the wind here doesn't happen in like just when it's like summer, or warm outside. It happens when it's cold. It happens throughout the year, the winds that come through. Since we live in the countryside, we do feel the wind, and we have lots of trees around. Um, and so it sometimes it can be extreme. We've had like some large branches fall off the trees, and I know sometimes in Montevideo there's extreme winds. The there may be a couple of streets that get blocked off because of large branches falling and blocking streets. But overall, people here are, kind of pretty used to it. I would say more so on the coast or like the beach towns. For me, when I've experienced the wind there, it's it's pretty bad, especially if it's cold in the winter. Being on the beach with that crazy wind, it's not really fun. So just in general, it's important to note that yes, there is wind. For me, it was unexpected because I didn't realize that before moving here. But if you are curious about visiting Uruguay or moving here, yes, there is wind. um, but like I said, the good thing about it, it'll last like a day or two, and then it's gone. So let's talk seasons. Uruguay is in the southern hemisphere, which means that seasons are the exact opposite of the northern hemisphere or the US. And this still kind of trips me up time to time. For example, like when I just in my head, if I think Easter, I automatically think spring. But then no, it's fall here. Or Christmas, when Thanksgiving and Christmas rolls around, it's really interesting because it's warm outside, hot, and for Christmas you're used to, hot chocolate, pumpkin spice lattes, sweater weather. But no, here we are in shorts, sandals, and bathing suits. So, in the Western world, I guess Australia and South Africa is like that. But coming from the U.S., it definitely was a bit of a change for me. Also, the lingo for temperatures, it's in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And I haven't been able to get used to talking in Celsius. I still check the Fahrenheit on my phone, and as a note to myself, I should probably force myself to keep it on Celsius just so I can like learn. But it's like if I know, okay, 70, 75-degree weather is happening today, yes, beautiful, perfect. But like in Celsius, I don't know. It doesn't roll off the tip of my tongue. So so currently we are in November and it's practically summer. It's almost summer here. Summer goes from December to March. It's, you know, it's warm, can be hot some days. The heat in summer comes in waves. There will be, for example, a heat wave coming through for 2 to 3 days, and then it usually breaks with rain to cool it off. It's somewhat humid, but not if you've ever been to Central America or Texas, Louisiana, Florida, for example, in the summer, it's really like hot and sticky, um, and you're just like sweating. It's not really like that here. I experienced that a lot, like I said, growing up as a kid and visiting my grandparents in Panama for the summers or family in Nicaragua. And I'll never forget, especially there, um, I would take multiple showers a day because I was constantly sweating. And the worst part is that I would take a shower, and by the time I'd get to my room and finish getting dressed, I was already sweating again. So to compare it to that type of situation, luckily it's not like that here. Thank God. I was so relieved. It's a mix of really nice sunny days, and then, like I said, a little heat wave comes through, and the rain cools it off, and then it's back to nice weather. And then one thing to note for summertime is that the UV index is insane. Some people compare it to as bad or close to Australia. And one thing that I notice here, for example, like at school, the teachers ask the kids, and they encourage, the families to always wear hats and put sunscreen on the kids before going to school for playing outside for recess. And like growing up, that was like never. I mean, yeah, it was really hot and really sunny in New Orleans, but you know, I'm 37, so like when I was a kid, that was just like a different time, different day and age. I don't think people really cared about putting sunscreen on their kids or having them wear hats when they go outside and play recess in the middle of the day with the sun beating down on them. In New Orleans, we just suffered in the heat. Like I said, different times. But Uruguay here, they take it pretty seriously, especially for the kids. And And also, okay, so there Uruguay has a huge beach culture. And when it comes to the sun, everyone knows like how extreme the UV index can be. So the time frame for the beach is people it's kind of like clockwork. It's crazy. Usually by like 8, 9, people are already at the beach. And then by 11 noon, people leave, go home, eat lunch, relax, take a nap, and then they come back around 3 to 4 in the afternoon. So they avoid that 12 to 3, 12 to 4 p.m. Midday sun. And it's funny, it's like clockwork. Like when noon rolls around, I mean, the beach just starts emptying out. And then when it's 3 or 4, it just starts I mean, the crowd comes back. It's kind of I'd never seen that before. I mean, I usually would just be at the beach all day, grab food and come right back. Um, but yeah, Uruguay has a huge beach culture. Everyone hits the beach hard January and February. And the people from Montevideo, they usually go out east, and everyone just, really holds sacred their beach time here. After Christmas and New Year's, like I said, January, Montevideo is usually dead. Some places are open, but a lot of places actually close, like restaurants, cafes, and um, a lot of the workers take that time off. So Montevideo becomes like a much slower pace of life in the summer months, very tranquilo. So going to fall happens April through May, and it's one of the best seasons, 60, 70-degree weather, cooler, calmer. There's fewer tourists usually. After Easter rolls around is when everyone is kind of like back in the grind in terms of the new year. Because when the new year hits, it's January, right? But everyone's off to the beach, relaxing, hanging out. Um, so it's not until Easter that everyone kind of like seriously mentally gets back on the grind. School starts in March. So everyone kind of gets rolling March, April. But until then, it's just fun in the sun. Another good part about this time of year is that it's end of harvest season, and it's the perfect time for visiting bodegas, which is what they call wineries. They'll have a lot of vendimia or harvest events going on where you can like stomp the grapes, and there's like fun music and asados, and it's just like a really fun time. That's usually end of February, March specifically, and a little bit into April. The next season, winter, that one goes from June to August, and um, it does get cold here. I always compare it to like New Orleans back home, in terms of like winter here, of how cold it gets. Like New Orleans, South, like New Orleans. I used to live in Tallahassee too, so New Orleans, you know, North Florida, Texas, that kind of um, cold weather. Goes down to like the 40s, like 50s, 40s, 30s occasionally. That's just kind of a like a cold wave coming through, like a little like cold snap. There is so the problem, well, the thing with Uruguay is that it's a damp cold, which makes the temperature outside feel colder than what it already is. And the houses are already not insulated well. So, from personal experience, I always advise it's important to live in a home that has high quality windows and doors so that the wind and the cold air don't creep in. We personally had to change out all of our windows and doors in our house for this exact reason. And it helps. It helps so much, especially in our bedrooms and the living room. That's what we really cared about. And because of this, the moisture in the air, like the dampness, mold does can build up or appear like on walls and dark corners of the homes because of the humidity and like condensation realities, specifically during winter. But there are ways you can prepare for it and manage it and combat it. When I lived in uh, the south of Spain, the same exact problem happen. It's just basically because of the construction types of the homes and the weather. And the best advice when I was in Spain, even though it was freezing cold outside, was to leave windows open during the day for like 1 to 2 hours to help with airflow. So here in Uruguay, I do the same, but it is hard and kind of counterintuitive because you don't want the cold air coming into your house. Personally, in our experience, the fireplace was like the best heating mechanism to get the moisture out of the house. You can also get dehumidifiers here to help with the moisture in the air, but I mean, most locals don't really use that. I've kind of seen more of expats using dehumidifiers. Everyone just kind of uses their fireplace, the wood burning stoves, because that's the common way of how people heat their homes here. We have one fireplace in our living room, and then we also have an AC unit for heating whenever we don't want to use the fireplace or we just happen to not have wood. And we had to install that AC unit in our living room because the house didn't come with it. And it was great. It was a great decision because it's nice to have options personally. Ordering wood, okay, ordering wood in the winter, that's a whole other thing I had to learn here. I'll give more details on that for like another episode as winter is approaching, because that's when it will be, more significant of a topic. But living here in Uruguay was the first time I'd ever had a fireplace in my home, so um, that was kind of neat. Okay, so spring here goes from September to November. We are finishing out spring currently as I speak, and it is my favorite season and time of the year. It's beautiful 70, 75-degree weather during the day. The night will probably cool down to like 60s, but it feels very much like San Diego personally. We have a lot of sunny days with blue skies, cloud free. The days are longer because the sun comes out earlier, it goes down later. And oh, another point I wanted to bring up is another good thing about Uruguay is that the time does not change here. We don't fall back or spring forward. Um, no one gets tripped up with the time change. And personally, I think it's really nice. If you are allergy prone, this is not a great time of the year for you because there's definitely pollen in the air. The other thing, pollen spring thing we have to deal with every year are these things called pelucitas. And they're little, like, tiny, fluffy fibers that they fall from this, like, one specific tree. Um, if you're in Montevideo, like driving around Montevideo, these things are flying everywhere, especially if it's okay, a windy day and you're out walking the streets of Montevideo. Oh, brace yourself. You have to wear sunglasses, um, cover your eyes, they get stuck in your hair, they could fly into your eyes. It's, like I said, just if you're allergy prone, like it's not a fun time because these pelucitas, they are in the air, flying everywhere. And yeah, so that's spring here. But that just lasts about a month or two, luckily. And then gardens are exploding. The viveros, which are the garden centers, they're super packed with people picking up flowers and plants and all that good stuff. Mm. So that's just like a wrap up and kind of like a summary of how each season is here in Uruguay. If you're concerned about heating and cooling in the summer months, most people open their windows or occasionally use the AC units. We have our AC units in our living room and one in each bedroom, and we usually more consistently use them in the rooms at night, especially if there's like a heat wave coming through. We always have it running at night to keep us cool. I like a cool bedroom. And in the winter, we'll use wood stoves or if we don't have wood or We're lazy, we'll just use the AC unit. I do wanna note that I think I mentioned earlier, yeah, we had to add an AC unit to our living room. For some reason, most people here just kind of have a fan in their living room, but, being from, used to, like, central AC, cooling and heating, you don't wanna be, like, hanging out in your living room, kitchen, watching TV, and being really hot or really cold, so we added the AC unit, to have our options, but if we're using consistently, it definitely does affect our electricity usage. So usually in the summer and like winter months, the electricity bill does go up a bit, but it's worth it. um, in terms of like rain and storms and flooding, once in a while we'll get heavy rain patterns or thunderstorms, but nothing consistent. I just go back to always comparing Central America, where, like I said, there'll be a solid 6 to 8 month period where it consistently rains every afternoon, like in Central America or in Florida. But it's not like that here. Don't think you're going to have to deal with that. You're not always going to have to be carrying an umbrella like every day at all times or wearing, rain boots. Since living here, 2 winters have been rainier. Out of the 5 we've spent here, 2 have been rainier than others. But rainier meaning that there was, like, just 1 full solid week where it rained nonstop. Um, I mean, maybe at a time there'd be, like, thunderstorms, but then it was just, like, consistent rain, um, which is annoying, but I actually welcome the occasional rainy solid rainy week because our 2nd year of living here, we did not have that, and we ended up in a drought situation where everything was really dry. The grass died. There was a whole, oh, you know, water kind of situation, shortage going on. I mean, we were fine. We definitely had, our utilities, we pay for OSE, which is, like the city water. But yeah, that's a whole other story. Oh, I'll get to at some other point. So, like I said, I welcome the occasional solid rainy week. But I just think before moving, if you plan on moving to Uruguay, it's always good to know and be aware of potential flooding in your area, and just like ensure your house is on a bit of an elevation to not have to worry about that type of stuff. And also make sure your roof is in like good condition because um, you don't want to have like water leakage creep into your house. And kind of like wrapping up on the whole climate thing, there are microclimates around the country to be aware of if you're considering moving to Uruguay. So, for example, inland, the interior tends to have colder winters and then hotter summers, especially north of the country, closer to Brazil. Coastal areas are breezier, but they are a bit more humid. And if you know anything about, wine or olive oil, those are like perfect weather conditions for growing grapes and wines. Grapes for wine and olives for olive oil. And any final tips for people moving here? If you are curious about Uruguay and want to visit or come for a scouting trip, it's good to keep these like weather conditions in mind, especially like if you're coming from the northern hemisphere, the US or whatever, it's opposite seasons. But the best months to be in Uruguay to plan a visit are personally, I think November, December, which is spring, getting into summer, or March and April, which is um, fall going into, well, it's fall. So if you do want to see what, winter and summer is like, that's also good to see. So if just to see if you can actually handle it, or if you think you could, kind of withstand it, shall I say. But overall, personally, I think the weather's been a pleasant experience for me. Just Um, I do think that, like how I feel depends on, how I grew up and how I experienced my adult life. And whether you like it or not, no pun intended, weather is just such an important part of daily life. And, it's always good to be it's always good to be informed of knowing how it's going to be, especially if you plan to be here full time year round. That's how you and that's how you'll have the most pleasant and tranquil experience, knowing what you're getting yourself into. So, anyways, I hope that gives you a little insight into what the weather's like here in Uruguay after spending the last, personally, 5 years and all four seasons, 5 times. And guys, always remember that life abroad doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be tranquil. So, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of this type of content, please like, subscribe, send in your comments. I read them all. Cheers.